Imagine waking up one day to realize that the entire world, an industry you spent 2 decades conquering, has collectively decided they are completely done with you. It didn't happen slowly for Ellen DeGeneres, and right now, in 2026, it is happening in the exact same terrifying way to Blake Lively. The crown of Hollywood's golden girl hasn't just slipped. It has shattered into a million pieces, and the internet is currently sweeping up the debris with a level of pure, unadulterated savagery we haven't seen since the great daytime television reckoning of 2020. You can practically hear the collective gasp across Beverly Hills as the industry whispers the ultimate, career-ending curse word: Mean Girl. It is the exact same script, the same devastating public rejection, just with better hair and a significantly higher fashion budget. Even Blake herself seems to see the writing on the wall as her carefully constructed empire of effortless glamour, domestic perfection, and high-profile friendships completely craters around her. Are we witnessing a classic case of Hollywood cannibalism? Or did the mask simply slip too far to ever be put back on? Turn up your volume because this gets incredibly dark. To understand exactly how we got to this point, we have to look at the meticulously crafted illusion that was Blake Lively before the cracks became impossible to ignore. For nearly 20 years, she was the undisputed darling of the red carpet. A woman who seemingly had it all without even trying. From the moment she stepped onto the screen as Serena van der Woodsen, she wasn't just playing an Upper East Side socialite. She became the blueprint for modern Hollywood royalty. She was beautiful, she was witty, and most importantly, she was half of America's most aggressively marketed power couple alongside Ryan Reynolds. Their playful internet banter was treated like a national treasure, a masterclass in public relations disguised as genuine, relatable romance. Add to that a flawlessly curated lifestyle brand, a thriving beverage company, and a permanent seat at the right hand of Taylor Swift, and Blake appeared entirely untouchable. She was operating at a level of societal immunity where criticism simply couldn't touch her, much like a certain daytime talk show host who spent 2 decades dancing into the hearts of millions while telling them to be kind. But Hollywood is a fickle machine, and the higher the pedestal, the more devastating the drop when the public decides it's time to pull the rug out from underneath you. The turning point came with a project that was supposed to cement her legacy as a serious, dramatic powerhouse capable of handling heavy, culturally significant narratives. The film was It Ends With Us, adapted from a book with a massive, fiercely loyal global fanbase that deals heavily with the dark, traumatic realities of domestic violence. This wasn't a romantic comedy, and it certainly wasn't a showcase for summer fashion. But the promotional campaign that followed looked like a pastel-colored fever dream completely detached from reality. While her co-star and director Justin Baldoni was using his press platform to speak seriously about survival, trauma, and the systemic issues women face, Blake was walking out in floral gowns, telling viewers to grab their friends, wear their florals, and head out to the theaters for a fun night out. It was a tonal car crash of epic proportions, made infinitely worse by the fact that she was actively using the film's massive press junket to promote her new hair care line and her cocktail mixers. The internet, which possesses a terrifyingly sharp collective memory, immediately smelled a rat. The disconnect between a story about systemic abuse and a multi-millionaire actress telling you to mix a gin and tonic before watching it was so jarring that it caused an instant, violent shift in public perception. Suddenly, the effortless charm started looking like calculated indifference, and the playful wit began to taste a lot like condescension. People started digging through the archives, pulling up old interviews from a decade ago where her responses to reporters felt icy, dismissive, and fundamentally mean. There is a specific, infamous interview from the Gossip Girl era that resurfaced and went completely viral, showing Blake making a deeply uncomfortable comment to a journalist who had just congratulated her on her pregnancy. The clip acted as a catalyst, breaking the dam of public goodwill, and allowing a torrent of skepticism to flood the internet. It was the exact moment the collective consciousness began drawing parallel lines straight to Ellen DeGeneres. Just like Ellen, whose entire empire collapsed when the gap between her public kindness and her private behavior became a chasm too wide to bridge, Blake's Golden Girl image was rapidly disintegrating. The industry took notice, and behind closed doors, the whispers began that she had become liabilities wrapped in couture. The narrative changed overnight from a celebration of her success to an intense, hyper-focused interrogation of her character, her past actions, and her behavior behind the scenes of her latest production. What the public didn't realize was that the messy promotional tour was just the tip of a much larger, incredibly toxic iceberg that was melting rapidly under the spotlight. Behind the scenes of the film, a brutal, high-stakes civil war had been raging between Blake and Justin Baldoni, a battle for creative dominance that eventually spilled out of the editing room and straight into the federal court system. The rumors of a feud were confirmed in the most explosive way possible when major legal filings leaked, revealing an intricate web of accusations that read like a psychological thriller. Blake alleged that Baldoni had fostered a deeply hostile, inappropriate work environment on set, going as far as to accuse him of sexual harassment and a coordinated, malicious smear campaign designed to destroy her reputation before the film even debuted. These weren't standard creative differences. These were career-ending, heavy-hitting allegations aimed directly at a prominent director. But if Blake expected the industry to blindly rally behind her, she severely miscalculated the shifting tides of Hollywood politics, because Baldoni didn't just retreat into the shadows. He hired the most ruthless crisis management team's money could buy and fired back with a massive counteroffensive that completely derailed her strategy. Baldoni's legal team launched a devastating countersuit, demanding an astronomical $400 million in damages from both Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, accusing the Hollywood power couple of extortion, systemic defamation, and an invasive, illegal breach of privacy. The legal documents painted a terrifyingly different picture of the production, alleging that Blake and her husband effectively hijacked the entire project, using their immense industry leverage to bully the director, rewrite scripts without permission, and force an entirely different cut of the movie that completely sanitized the story's heavy themes to protect Blake's personal brand. According to these filings, Blake operated not as a collaborative producer, but as an untouchable dictator who refused to take direction, and used her massive social circle to isolate anyone who disagreed with her. The court papers alleged that Ryan Reynolds was pulling strings from the shadows, utilizing his massive corporate apparatus to intimidate studio executives, and ensure that Blake's version of the film was the only one that saw the light of day, regardless of the contractual agreements already in place. This legal warfare effectively split Hollywood down the middle, turning a studio film into a battleground where powerful executives were forced to choose sides between a beloved director and the industry's most formidable power couple. The trial was officially set for May 18, 2026, in a federal courtroom in New York City, creating a countdown clock for what promised to be the most explosive celebrity legal showdown of the decade. The witness lists that began circulating behind the scenes were nothing short of a Hollywood executive's worst nightmare, featuring a list names like Hugh Jackman and Blake's closest confidant, Taylor Swift, who were potentially going to be forced to testify under oath about the inner workings of this toxic production. The stakes couldn't have been higher, and the tension within Blake's inner circle was reaching a breaking point as the realization set in that a public trial would mean total, irreversible exposure of how the Hollywood elite operate when the cameras stop rolling. Every single strategic move she had made to protect her image was now being turned against her in the court of law and the court of public opinion simultaneously, leaving her with fewer options by the day. The true horror of a modern Hollywood cancellation isn't just that it happens in the legal system. It's that it happens simultaneously on the global stage of public opinion, where the verdict is delivered in seconds and there is absolutely no right to appeal. As the clock ticked closer to that dreaded May 18th trial date, the numbers coming out regarding Blake's public standing were nothing short of a statistical bloodbath. For years, major talent agencies and brands had tracked her marketability with data that showed an unbelievable 81% public approval rating, putting her in the rare, elite tier of celebrities who were universally liked across every demographic. But by the early months of 2026, internal industry reports leaked showing that her approval rating had absolutely cratered to a disastrous 10.6%. It was a historic, unprecedented collapse that sent shockwaves through corporate boardrooms from New York to Los Angeles. Brands that had been aggressively bidding for partnerships with her lifestyle line suddenly went completely silent, pulling contracts and delaying campaigns out of fear that her name had become radioactive to the average consumer. Even more humiliating for Blake's camp was the fact that Justin Baldoni's numbers, while also damaged by the immense toxicity of the scandal, managed to hover just slightly ahead of hers at 8.7%, proving that the public had essentially looked at both sides of this multi-million-dollar war and decided that nobody was innocent. The media, which had spent the last 2 decades throwing bouquets at her feet, smelled blood in the water and pivoted with a ruthlessness that only Hollywood can manufacture. Major entertainment outlets started publishing devastating expose articles, citing anonymous production insiders who were finally comfortable speaking out now that the Golden Girls' armor was completely cracked. A highly publicized report in Life and Style magazine explicitly used the phrase that Blake's legal and PR teams had been desperately trying to avoid, stating that the comparisons to Ellen DeGeneres' spectacular fall from grace were actively circulating through the highest echelons of the industry, with people openly calling Blake the new mean girl of Hollywood. That specific word, mean, carried a historical weight that was impossible to ignore because it was the exact same linguistic dagger that had dismantled Ellen's entire multi-billion-dollar syndication empire. For decades, Ellen was the bubbly, dancing daytime savior who built a fortress out of the phrase "be kind," only for the world to discover that the reality behind the curtain was allegedly filled with coldness, silence, and intense workplace intimidation. Now Blake was watching her own carefully constructed fortress. The image of the breezy, effortless, domestic goddess who bakes pies, raises beautiful children with a handsome husband, and handles fame with a playful wink, being completely recontextualized as a calculated, corporate mask. The public began looking back at her glamorous life not with envy, but with deep suspicion, viewing her massive influence as a tool used to crush anyone who dared to stand in her way or challenge her creative dominance on a film set. To the casual observer, a move to Europe might have seemed like a sudden, chaotic reaction to a bad press cycle, but the infrastructure was already perfectly laid out for them. Ryan's immense business portfolio included his highly publicized ownership of the Welsh football club Wrexham AFC alongside Rob McElhenney, meaning the couple already possessed deep, established roots, corporate networks, and an active, positive public presence within the United Kingdom. Moving across the pond wasn't just a theoretical dream. It was a highly practical logistical pivot that offered a ready-made escape hatch from the intense, suffocating scrutiny of Hollywood. But the parallel to Ellen was so precise it was almost comical, because when Ellen's talk show finally gasped its last breath in 2022, and her subsequent stand-up attempts failed to clear her name, she and her wife Portia de Rossi packed up their entire lives and fled to a rural estate in England, claiming it was a political stand, but leaving the entire world knowing it was a geographical retreat from an industry that had thoroughly blacklisted her. This idea that a celebrity can simply pack their bags, cross an ocean, and leave their reputation behind in the age of a globalized internet is the ultimate delusion of the hyper-elite. A testament to how detached from reality these individuals become when they spend decades surrounded by yes men. An insider close to the situation leaked to reporters that Blake truly felt European filmmakers would view her as an artistic martyr rather than a calculated corporate executive, hoping they would give her a second chance based purely on her status as a global style icon. But while her legal team was busy trying to manage the narrative of this potential European exile, the looming shadow of the federal trial was threatening to drag the most powerful people in music and entertainment into the mud right alongside her, creating a level of behind-the-scenes chaos that money simply could not fix. The crown jewel of this impending courtroom disaster was none other than Taylor Swift, who had found herself officially placed on the high-profile witness list for the upcoming trial. The friendship between Blake and Taylor wasn't some flimsy, transactional Hollywood arrangement cooked up by publicists for a red carpet photo op. It was an incredibly deep, decade-long bond where Taylor was a constant fixture in the lives of Blake's children, and Blake was a permanent fixture in the ultra-private, high-security inner sanctum of Taylor's global empire. Because of the absolute, staggering magnitude of Taylor Swift's current cultural dominance, the mere reality that she was going to be forced to walk into a federal courtroom, sit in a witness chair under penalty of perjury, and answer aggressive, hostile questions about Blake's behind-the-scenes conduct and production disputes was enough to cause absolute terror within the music industry's highest corporate offices. Blake's lead defense attorney even took the extraordinary step of addressing the situation publicly, issuing a sharp statement to the press arguing that Blake had done everything humanly possible within her legal power to protect her close personal friends from being dragged into this highly weaponized legal circus. The defense firmly blamed Baldoni's aggressive legal team for deliberately subpoenaing a list names like Taylor Swift and Hugh Jackman purely as a terror tactic, an institutional power play designed to create so much outside pressure from powerful managers and record labels that Blake would be forced to drop her claims just to save her social circle from total public exposure. It was a brutal, high-stakes game of chicken where both sides were using the names of global icons as shields and swords, pushing the entire situation toward a catastrophic tipping point where a settlement was no longer just an option, but an absolute necessity for the survival of multiple Hollywood careers. The absolute chaos of a high-stakes celebrity legal war is that just when you think you've reached the series finale, the characters find a way to drop a spin-off that is twice as toxic as the original. And right now, in May 2026, the aftermath of this massive settlement is exposing the final, desperate plays of a Hollywood elite who simply cannot accept that the public has stopped buying what she is selling. On May 4, 2026, just 2 short weeks before jury selection was scheduled to turn a New York federal court into a global media circus, the announcement dropped that Blake Lively and Wayfarer Studios had officially reached an out-of-court settlement. The terms were sealed, the dollar amounts were locked away behind ironclad confidentiality agreements, and a carefully sanitized joint statement was pushed out to the media, declaring that the film was a source of pride and that everyone wanted closure. It was the ultimate Hollywood carpet-sweeping operation, timed so perfectly that hours later, Blake was walking the red carpet at the 2026 Met Gala in an archival Versace gown, smiling for the flashing bulbs as if the previous 3 years of reputation collapse had been nothing but a bad dream. But behind that Met Gala glow lay a devastating legal reality that her PR team has been working overtime to spin into a victory. The truth is, the settlement wasn't a triumph for Blake. It was a desperate damage control maneuver executed, because her entire legal strategy had completely shattered just weeks prior. In April 2026, the federal judge overseeing the case delivered a monumental blow to Blake's camp by completely throwing out 10 of her 13 original claims. Most catastrophically, the judge dismissed her explosive federal sexual harassment allegations against Justin Baldoni, effectively removing him and every other individual defendant from the lawsuit entirely. The legal justification was a harsh dose of reality. The court ruled that because of her status as an independent contractor rather than a traditional employee, her federal harassment claims simply did not hold up under that specific legal framework. Overnight, the main villain of her narrative was legally cleared, leaving her standing on a rapidly sinking ship with nothing left but a handful of weak breach of contract and commercial retaliation claims against the production company. When you strip away the high-fashion distractions and the vague press releases, the parallel to Ellen DeGeneres becomes so blindingly obvious that it's almost terrifying. When Ellen's empire began to crack, her initial response wasn't accountability. It was an aggressive, multi-layered attempt to control the narrative, to file corporate grievances, and to use her immense institutional power to make the problem vanish before the public could see the full extent of the rot behind the daytime curtain. Blake followed that exact same corporate playbook, utilizing every ounce of her immense industry leverage, her A-list husband's massive corporate apparatus, and her global celebrity friendships to construct a fortress around herself. But just like Ellen discovered in 2020, the modern public doesn't care about your fortress anymore. Once the collective internet decides that the person on screen doesn't match the person behind the scenes, every single defensive move you make just looks like a rich, powerful individual using their wealth to silence the opposition. The desperation didn't stop with the signing of the settlement papers, because even with her primary claims dead in the water, Blake's legal team immediately pivoted to a secondary battlefield in California, launching an aggressive new motion to claw back tens of millions of dollars in additional fees and commercial damages. Her lawyers began aggressively citing specialized California civil codes designed to protect individuals from retaliatory lawsuits, trying to argue that the massive, $400 million defamation suit that Baldoni and Wayfarer had thrown at her in 2025 was a bad faith weapon meant to silence her. They are currently pushing for treble damages, 3 times the standard financial penalty, in a desperate bid to walk away from this multi-year disaster with some form of a quantifiable legal win that she can show to nervous corporate sponsors. But the opposing legal teams are firing back with absolute venom, openly calling her victory declarations absurd, and pointing out to the media that she is trying to spin a massive courtroom defeat into a PR triumph. This is the exact point in the celebrity downfall script where the illusion of control completely detaches from reality. It is the tragic comedy of the hyper-elite. They spend so many years surrounded by high-priced lawyers, managers, and publicists who nod at every idea that they genuinely believe they can rewrite a federal court docket the same way they rewrite a movie script in the editing room. Ellen did the exact same thing. She thought one more calculated on-air apology, one more highly produced interview, or one more Netflix comedy special, where she joked about being kicked out of show business would magically reset the cultural clock and make everyone forget the stories of workplace toxicity. But the public memory in 2026 isn't just sharp, it is deeply vindictive. The numbers don't lie, and when a celebrity's public approval rating plummets from a legendary 81% down into the absolute gutter of 10.6%, you aren't just dealing with a bad press cycle anymore. You are looking at a permanent structural collapse of a global brand. So where does Hollywood go from here? And what happens to the golden girl who has officially become persona non grata in the very boardrooms that created her? The industry is already moving on with its trademark coldness, leaving Blake and her inner circle to figure out whether a permanent geographical retreat to Europe is the only way to breathe life back into her career. But regardless of whether she stays to fight the back-cush legal scraps in California, or flees across the Atlantic to hide out in the high fashion circles of the United Kingdom, the lesson of this entire multi-year saga remains crystal clear. In the modern entertainment landscape, the system will happily build you up to impossible heights, providing you with wealth, fame, and the illusion of absolute power. But the second your public image stops serving the corporate machine, that same system will drop you within a single news cycle. Blake Lively didn't just share a narrative trajectory with Ellen DeGeneres. She proved that the Hollywood meat grinder operates with absolute uniformity, treating even its most glamorous royalty as entirely disposable assets when the music finally stops playing. And that is the terrifying reality of how the modern Hollywood machine operates. They will build you up, put you on a flawless pedestal, and the very second your image cracks, they will push you into the exact same meat grinder that claimed Ellen DeGeneres. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Blake Lively can actually rebuild her career after a statistical bloodbath like this? Or is that 10.6% approval rating a permanent career death sentence? Is she genuinely preparing for a total European exile with Ryan Reynolds? Or is this just another high-stakes PR distraction to keep us from looking at what actually happened in that federal courtroom? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because I read everything and I want to see whose side you are actually on after all of this. If you want to stay ahead of the curve and get the actual, unfiltered truth behind Hollywood's biggest cover-ups before the studio lawyers lock them away forever, make sure to hit that like button, smash subscribe, and turn on notifications. This story is far from over, and you know I'll be right here the second the next piece of this puzzle leaks.